And you got to be careful because folks are taught different things. The idea of there being a new revelation, I got to close off this idea. But 2 John, one last passage, and 2 John, John warns against the very idea of folks getting caught up in teaching, believing and following false concepts that men may give to you. He talks about this in 2 John verse 9 and verse 10. Verse 9, he says, whoever transgresses and does not abide in the teaching of the doctrine of Christ does not have God. Anyone who does not abide or remain or stay inside of the teaching of Christ does not have God. Wait a minute, now preacher, I'm a part of a group, but we don't really stay in the Bible. Anyone, let me really say it again, verse number 9. Anyone, whoever transgresses, verse 9, and does not abide, remain, or stay in the doctrine of the teaching of Christ does not have God. He who abides of the doctrine of Christ has both the Father and the Son. If anyone comes to you and does not bring this doctrine, the word doctrine literally means teaching. Anybody comes to you and does not bring this teaching. Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, John, don't receive them into your house and don't read them. The Bible is clear that you're not called to have fellowship and spend time letting someone teach you. Now, you have to teach others who don't know the truth. Yes, sir. Right. But I want you to realize, even laid here foundationally inside the text, that tell somebody, watch the folk who act like apostles. Now tell them, watch the folk who give good speeches. Look at verse number 6. Verse number 6, 2 Corinthians 11, verse number 6. Here what Paul expresses next of all inside this text. Even though I am untrained in speech, yet I am not in knowledge, but we have been more thoroughly manifested among you in all things. When Paul says he's not trained in speech, when you study historically what's happening at this time, they had a certain methodology of preaching and teaching, or a speech giving. And folks who were well trained and well qualified knew the rhetoric of the day. Actually, the ideology of this period of time was a sense of expressing to you that when you speak, you abuse your listeners. You attack them. You let your listeners know who's in control. And there's a dogmatic approach that they would do inside of their preaching and their teaching. Their methodology was all based, it was not based on what they taught. It was based on how they taught. And folk were impressed with the way a person laid out a lesson. They listened for form and homiletical style and approach to how the speaker would speak. Martin Luther King was a great emancipator of having folk to be accepted in our society. Malcolm X did a lot for the sake of trying to lift up those who are in black society, black culture, black environment, were living under challenging situations. Joel Osteen and T.D. Jakes, many others are preachers who have the ability, who have great rhetorical and oratory skills. And some folk are moved by the oratory skills of a speaker. Because a man has the ability to share rhetoric in a certain kind of way. And sometimes, if you're not careful, even members of God's church will sit there and say, oh, I like the way he did that thing. And you can be moved by, because speakers have learned the process of speaking, how to use your arms in a way to express big ideas and the necessity of how to structure the voice in a way to project a message, to pull your audience in. There are skills of training and skills of direction that give you insight into how to express and communicate things. And even members of the church sometimes, if they're not careful, can get so caught up in rhetoric. And how I just love the way so-and-so talk. It just sends something up a spine. In Paul's day, if you were a good orator, that's like a good motivational speaker. There was a methodology, a training, an emphasis laid up in that. And the dilemma is that a member of the church, a member who loves the Lord, is not supposed to focus on being moved by rhetoric, which is what you say, or oratory skills, which is how you say it. But a member of the family of God is supposed to be moved by, based on, is it true? The only question is what the speaker says true? Sadly enough, years ago, when I preached in Alabama, we would go down to actually Rogersville. They'd have a big thing every year, before they have a big singing taking place, and they would have a series of preachers all day long, preachers. And then I would sit in the audience. I was in school studying which is now Heritage, which I obviously at the time, and I would go and I would hear these guys up preaching, and they'd be preaching harder, and they'd get on the floor. See, so preachers get on. Sometimes they get on the floor. You know, they got that old school Baptist preachers would do the ha. And ha. The Lord said, ha. Look around. Ha. He's a coming. Ha. Ha. And folk were moved by the rhetoric in their approach because they got caught up in the flow. What we're talking now, K-Root course, those are called, and then they have some preachers we call runs, you know. In the book of Genesis, he's the beginning and the end. In Exodus, he's the one that walks us all out. And they have to call those are called runs. We got books. I got books in my office with runs in them. I don't do a lot of runs. To me, runs can irritate me because I know it's just a run. And I've seen guys preach a whole sermon off of runs. And it's somebody, you know, they got to go this whole list of things, and they take you the songs, or they take words, and people get. And I was sitting in the audience in Alabama, and the preacher was preaching, and the church preaching, and everybody's on the audience, and he got him on the run. He said some things I knew the audience didn't agree with, but they got so excited and so hyped about the environment. Amen. Yeah, praise. Yeah. I'm saying, well, you don't agree with that. Did you hear what the man was saying? Getting caught on rhetoric. Getting caught in the motion and the environment. Getting caught to the place that you're so moved that you're confused because you don't even hear the message that's coming out. Paul's warning, he said, these men have a great speech. They know how to use their voice, know how to use posture and tone, and know how to use rhythm. If you got rhythm down, a good preacher, a good singer's got rhythm. You can't be a good singer and not have no rhythm. I tried that kind of stuff, and you can't. You're just like jump rope. You got to jump in right, or you gonna mess up the rhythm. Singers got to know how to stop singing and talk and get back in on beat. You come back in off beat, it's all messed up. There are preachers who know how to preach on beat. And there's a rhythm with that. You're taught that. You can be trained on how to do that. But that doesn't mean the message is true. I just like how, just because you like how somebody speaks, does not mean that you ought to follow what they're saying. You got to test the spirit by the spirit. You got to assess whether something is true or not. Because those who love God are focused on truth. If your concentration is not on truth, you got to be careful. Be cautious with folk who give good speeches. And there's some guys who can talk the paint off the wall. But that does not mean their message is true. Guess who's coming to town? So-and-so, ooh, I'm going to skip out on worship at the Lord's church because so-and-so, an international speaker, is coming into town. Jesus said those who worship God must worship him in spirit, that's your attitude, and in truth, which is what you believe and what you practice. If your worship is not based on truth, well, I didn't make it to the church today because I slipped out to go across town and hear so-and-so. I heard it was coming to town. You didn't get a $25 admission to hear him preach. Well, because that's, of course they do. Because he ain't preaching. Amen. Tell somebody, be careful of those who give good speeches. And said, be careful of those who are forgetting and not giving. Be careful of those who are forgetting and not giving. Look at verse 7 through verse 12. I got to close with this. Back to 2 Corinthians 11, beginning verse number 7. Did I commit sin and humble myself that you might be exalted because I preach the gospel of God to you free of charge? I robbed other churches, taking wages from them to minister to you. And when I was present with you and in need, I was a burden to none of you. For what I lacked, the brethren who came from Macedonia supplied it. And in everything I kept myself from being burdensome to you, and so I will keep myself. As the truth of Christ is in me, no one shall stop me from this boasting in the regions of Achaia. Why? Because I don't love you? God knows what I do. I will also continue to do, that I may cut off the opportunity from those who desire an opportunity to regard it, just as we are in those things of which we boast. In other words, Paul said that I love you. I'm not going to take it down from you because I don't want nobody to say I preach to you for the sake of money. The dilemma we have is that we're living in a world with what we call a health and wealth gospel ideology. Now, many of you who have, some of you heard about The Secret. There was a video out and a movement out about 6 years ago, or maybe 10, called The Secret. It's the secret because, you see, a lot of people have known this idea and have actually implemented it. And I watched the video, and if you get on Netflix, and you got a Netflix account, you can find it in the documentary section, and the folks that have the videos out, they have books on it, and they talk about how all the great people of all times have practiced the secret.